They used to say I was lucky, that I should be grateful, that being adopted into a good family was a gift most kids like me never got. And I believed them. At least when I was young. When you're a child, love doesn't come in forms you understand. It comes in packed lunches, bedtime stories, a warm hand brushing your hair aside. But I didn't get those. Not really. What I got were rules, boundaries, expectations, and comparisons, constant, suffocating comparisons. I was adopted when I was 4. I don't remember much of the foster system, just blurry glimpses of gray rooms and echoing voices. But I remember the day they took me home. My new mom wore a cream sweater and held my hand like it was made of glass. My new dad smiled like he was posing for a magazine. I remember thinking, this is it. My new beginning. My real family. But from the moment we walked into their house, I felt it, that invisible line. The one that separated me from their real son, Caleb. He was 2 years older, tall, golden-haired, and already everything they ever wanted. He didn't have to try to be loved. He just was. Meanwhile, I was told to be grateful. To behave. To stay out of trouble. We gave you a second chance, Mom used to say whenever I asked for something simple. New shoes, a sleepover, a little more time on the playground. You're not like Caleb. You don't get to act spoiled. I became the polite one. The helpful one. The quiet shadow following the perfect son. At school I made sure to get good grades. At home I did the chores before being asked. I never complained even when Caleb broke something and I got blamed. Even when Dad forgot my birthday 2 years in a row. Even when they left me out of the family photo hanging above the fireplace. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't there for love. I was there to survive. But deep down a hunger grew. Not for attention but for acknowledgement. For someone, anyone, to say, we see you. You matter. It never came. When I turned 18 I got a part-time job to pay for college. Caleb didn't work a day in his life. His tuition, car, and apartment were all paid for in full. He has a future, Dad said. We want to set him up for success. When I pointed out I was going to the same university, Mom replied, you should just be proud you made it this far. So I never stopped trying. When Dad had surgery I skipped classes to drive him to appointments. When Mom's car broke down I took out a loan to fix it because they couldn't afford another payment, after helping Caleb with his wedding. When Caleb and his wife had a baby I offered to babysit every weekend. I brought groceries when Mom was sick. I helped clean the gutters when Dad's back gave out. But none of it was enough. Every time I missed a family dinner because of work I was selfish. Every time I asked for space I was ungrateful. Every time I didn't answer a call I was reminded, we took you in. You owe us everything. At first I tried to argue. Then I stopped trying altogether. They had already made up their minds about me. I was the outsider they brought in out of duty, not love. The one they reminded, passively, constantly, that I didn't truly belong. And yet I kept giving. Because some part of me still hoped that if I gave enough, did enough, was enough, one day they'd look at me and say, you are our son. But that day never came. By the time I was 25, I had already paid off 1/3 of my parents' mortgage. They didn't ask directly. It was implied, like everything else in that house. The furnace broke down one winter and Caleb said he didn't have the time to deal with it. So I did. The roof needed patching the following spring. You're the practical one, Dad said, sliding the paperwork toward me like it was a gift. I took it. Always took it. I lived in a cramped apartment 2 bus rides away from work. Meanwhile, Caleb got a new SUV every 3 years. Birthday gifts from the family. I gave up vacations, skipped weddings, worked overtime, and took on freelance jobs at night. I wasn't trying to be a martyr. I was trying to be a son. When Mom got sick, nothing terminal, just months of fatigue and specialists, I was the one who drove her to every appointment. I sat beside her while she slept through long waits in overlit hospital rooms. I filled her prescriptions, tracked her symptoms, arranged the second opinions she said she didn't need but secretly feared she did. Caleb sent flowers once. Then came the family barbecue. One of those obligatory summer get-togethers where everyone pretends things are fine under the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. I had just come back from a 14-hour shift, still in work boots and a grease-stained shirt. I was setting up chairs when I overheard Mom talking to one of her sisters. Her voice was low but not low enough. Ethan just doesn't give like Caleb does. He's always so distant. I don't know if it's the way he was raised or what, but he never really sacrifices for this family. I froze. That word, sacrifice, it hit me like a slap across the chest. I almost laughed. It was too absurd. Too cruel. Too wrong to be real. I stood there for a moment, the plastic chair in my hand suddenly too heavy, the weight of years pressing down on me. I remembered every bill, every ride, every night I spent making sure they were okay when no one else cared to. And all this time they thought I never sacrificed? The next few days passed in a daze. I didn't confront them. What was the point? Words hadn't meant much in that house. Actions never spoke louder. They just vanished unnoticed. But something shifted in me. For the first time in my life, I stopped rushing to help. When Dad called asking if I could come look at the plumbing, I told him to call a plumber. When Mom asked for a ride to the store, I said I was busy. I wasn't. I just wanted to see what would happen if I said no. It didn't take long for the backlash. "You've changed," Mom texted. "Too busy for your own family now?" Dad added, cold and clipped. Caleb sent a voice message. "Look, if you don't want to be part of this family, just say it. Stop playing the victim." Victim. That was rich. I didn't respond. Not out of spite. But because for once I wanted to see if they'd ever reach out for something other than convenience. They didn't. Instead, the guilt came packaged like it always had, in passive-aggressive remarks, in family group messages that excluded me, in stories told to others that made me the cold, distant adopted son who never quite fit in. But I wasn't bitter. I was tired. Tired of carrying weight that wasn't mine. Tired of being measured against someone else's definition of love. Tired of bleeding quietly so they could live comfortably. And in that exhaustion, something strange happened. I started to heal. I slept more. I stopped checking my phone every time it buzzed. I stopped calculating how much I could spare each month for a family that only saw me when they needed something fixed or paid for. For the first time in my life, I felt the faintest whisper of freedom. Not because they had changed, but because I finally had. It was Thanksgiving. The first one I missed since I was brought into the family. I didn't have plans, I just didn't go. No explanation. No excuse. I simply didn't show up. I turned off my phone, ordered Chinese takeout, and watched a movie alone in my apartment with my dog curled at my feet. I thought it would feel sad. It didn't. Felt like breathing. The next morning, I opened my phone to 23 unread messages. Group chats, missed calls, voicemails. The first thing I saw was a text from Mom. "You couldn't even bother to come say thank you. After everything we've done for you." Followed by, "You really are ungrateful." That word. Ungrateful. I stared at it for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could have listed every bill I paid, every night I sat by their side when they were sick, every event I gave up, every friend I lost because I was too busy playing the role of their invisible safety net. But I didn't respond. Because the truth was, they never wanted facts. They wanted feelings that validated their version of the story. And I wasn't going to give them that anymore. The next day Caleb called. He never called unless there was a problem. "Dad's furious," he said immediately, skipping any greeting. "Mom's been crying. They think you've turned your back on us." "I haven't turned my back," I said quietly. "I just stopped bending over backwards." He scoffed. "Is this about money? About attention? Jesus, Ethan, this is exactly what they mean. You always make everything about you." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. The irony was almost laughable. "You know what Dad said?" Caleb continued. "He said adopting you was the biggest mistake of his life. That no matter how much they gave, it was never enough for you." There was the final nail. They didn't just resent me. They regretted me. I ended the call. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't yell. I didn't beg for understanding. I just hung up. That night I packed a box. Not with belongings, but with every photo I had left of us. Birthdays. Holidays. Graduation. The ones where I was smiling, arms slung around people who never really saw me. I put them in the back of my closet behind old coats and broken memories. I wasn't angry. I was done. Done trying to belong. Done trying to earn my place in a story where I was always the footnote. A week later, I got a call from my parents' bank. Somehow, I was still listed as the emergency contact. There had been a missed mortgage payment, actually several. Their savings were nearly gone. Medical bills were piling up. They were facing foreclosure. I knew this day would come, because I had been the one holding up the fragile structure they called stability. And now that I was gone, it was collapsing in on itself. And I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. Because for the first time they were finally feeling the weight I had carried for years. They just didn't realize how much of their comfort had come from my quiet sacrifice. Until it wasn't there anymore. 3 weeks after that call from the bank, Caleb showed up at my apartment. I hadn't heard from him since the last time he accused me of being the center of my own universe. He looked exhausted, like life had started pushing back against his usual charm and confidence. I didn't invite him in. We stood in the hallway, the silence between us heavier than I expected. "They're drowning," he said. No hello. No apology. Just blame packed into 2 words. I nodded but said nothing. "They're months behind. Dad's trying to sell the truck. Mom hasn't been able to sleep. And all you're doing is standing there." "What do you want from me, Caleb?" asked my voice low. "Money? Forgiveness? An apology for not saving them from themselves again?" He flinched, and for the first time in my life I saw something like fear in his face. "I want you to stop acting like the victim," he snapped. "You think just because you paid a few bills you're some kind of martyr? You were adopted. They didn't have to take you in. You owe them everything." I stared at him. And that was when I knew he still didn't get it. "None of them did." "You think they saved me?" I said, my voice almost a whisper. "They took me in because it made them feel good. Because it made them look good. But they never gave me love, Caleb. They gave me responsibility. And I repaid them with more than either of you ever have." He didn't reply. Just stood there, blinking, fists clenched. He looked like a man who had come to punch down but realized too late that the ground beneath him was cracking. "They said you abandoned them," he muttered finally. "No," I said, my voice steady now. "I stopped protecting them." And with that I shut the door. The next day I opened my old folders. I started pulling records. Bank statements, transfer receipts, years of emails, service contracts. All in my name. All the invisible threads that had kept their world from falling apart. I wasn't angry. I wasn't seeking revenge. But I had finally decided that if they were going to tell a story about me, it was going to be the truth. Even if it shattered everything they thought they knew. I sent the email on a Tuesday morning. No subject line. No message in the body. Just an attachment titled, "Since You Forgot." Inside was a 94-page PDF. Every transfer. Every receipt. Every invoice. Every time I paid for something they said, just handled itself. Hospital visits. Utility bills. Mortgage top-ups. Repairs. Caleb's wedding DJ. Mom's new prescription glasses. The last 10 Christmas dinners. All of it. Every dollar. Every forgotten thank you. I didn't write a single word. Because the numbers spoke louder than I ever could. For years they told themselves I had done nothing. That I was cold, ungrateful, distant. That Caleb was the provider, the rock, the loyal son. But what they failed to realize was that while Caleb gave them compliments and photo ops, I gave them survival. And now, for the first time, they had to look at the weight of what I had carried. Without the comfort of ignorance to shield them. I got a call from Mom that night. I let it ring. She didn't leave a voicemail. The next morning there was a message from Dad. It read simply, "We didn't know." No apology. No remorse. Just confusion wrapped in too many years of assumption. And then came Caleb. His message came in at 2:14 a.m., a time when truth tends to slip past pride. "I didn't realize it was all you. I just thought. I don't know what I thought. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I powered off my phone. There was nothing left to say. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't trying to fix it or make them see me or patch over the cracks with more sacrifice. I had laid it all out, quiet, undeniable, complete. And now whatever came next wasn't mine to carry. I wasn't the son they wanted. But I had been more of a son than they ever deserved. And for the first time I truly believed that. They invited me over 2 weeks later. A Sunday lunch. Just the 3 of us. No Caleb this time. I thought about saying no. I thought about deleting the message altogether. But something in me, curiosity, closure, maybe both, said yes. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown too far beyond it. Mom opened the door with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Dad stood behind her, hands tucked into his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched, like he had shrunk into himself. The dining table was set like always. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with too much garlic. It was familiar, almost comforting. We didn't speak much during the meal. Just the clink of cutlery and soft, strained comments about the weather, the dog barking next door, the old neighbor who had moved away. After the plates were cleared, Mom sat across from me and finally said it. "I'm sorry, Ethan. For everything." Her voice shook on the last word. "I thought I was doing the right thing. But I see now we didn't really know you. Not the way we should have." Dad looked at me. "You were always there. And we just didn't see it." I nodded. Not as forgiveness. Not as agreement. Just as acknowledgement. "I used to wonder what I was doing wrong," I said. "Why it felt like I had to keep proving I belonged. But I realize now it was never about what I did. It was about what you chose not to see." Silence fell over the room like a blanket, soft, heavy, and strangely warm. There were no tears. No dramatic confessions. Just three people sitting with the weight of years they couldn't get back. When I stood to leave, Mom reached out, touching my wrist gently. "Can we start over?" she asked. I looked at her, really looked, and said, "I don't need a new start. I just need peace." And then I walked out. I haven't been back since. Not because I hate them. I don't. In some ways, I think I finally understand them. They loved the version of me that asked for nothing, gave everything, and never spoke up. But I'm not that person anymore. I live in another city now. I run a small mechanic shop. I hike on weekends. I adopted a rescue cat named Milo. I send holiday cards, short and polite. No photos. No calls. Just enough to say, "I'm okay. Hope you are too." Sometimes I wonder what they tell people now, when someone asks about me. Do they say I drifted? Do they say I was always difficult? Or have they finally started telling the truth? It doesn't matter. Because I stopped living my life for their narrative the day I hit send on that email. Some people only understand your value once you remove yourself from the equation. And once I did, I realized something I never thought I'd believe. Being chosen doesn't always mean being loved. But choosing yourself, that's where everything finally begins. Some people spend their whole lives giving everything, hoping that one day someone will say, "We see you." But what happens when that day never comes? Ethan's story is a reminder that sacrifice without acknowledgement becomes silent suffering. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't to give more. It's to walk away. He didn't leave with anger. He left with truth. And sometimes that's the most powerful exit of all. Have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong, no matter how much you gave? Comment yes or no below. Your voice matters here. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think twice about the quiet warriors in your life, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you never miss another powerful story from Outlaw Alley, where truth always finds a way to be heard.